Hi YouTube, this is Cooper with The Perspective. I'm going to do a little dive into the new bill that just passed the Senate, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And the first thing I'm going to do is give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of the bill itself, and then I'm going to give my analysis on the bill. So the bill itself is over, $1 trillion in spending from the federal government. And you can kind of break this spending into three categories. The first category is federal government infrastructure, which will get $101 billion in federal infrastructure like Amtrak and water facilities. The next thing is state and local governments, which will get about $287 billion on state and local infrastructure, which of course includes highways, transit, airports, and local water systems. And then the last part of the bill is spending on private infrastructure, which is about $129 billion in subsidies for businesses and individuals, which will go towards broadband, electric vehicle charging, and renewable energy. So what is good about this bill and what is bad about this bill? This bill is a lot better than the bill that Biden first introduced on infrastructure, which was to not only invest in traditional infrastructure like roads, bridges, et cetera, but also to invest in what he calls human infrastructure, which is basically expansion of welfare and social programs. So this is actual infrastructure that the federal government is investing in. Now, with that said, there's still problems with this bill. It's markedly better than the other bill, but there's still problems with this bill. The number one problem I have here is that this is a totally inefficient way of dealing with infrastructure. What should the federal government do with infrastructure? The federal government should spend money on federal infrastructure. That's it, period. It should not spend money on state and local governments' infrastructure. They should take care of that themselves. And it certainly should not spend money on private infrastructure, which is just distorting the market, giving unfair advantages to certain private holders of infrastructure over others. And not only that, it encourages the corruption and the lobbying from private businesses to get more handouts from the government. Now, there is no reason why the state of Ohio or the state of California should be paying for infrastructure in another state. And what do I mean by that? There is no reason why the federal government should be taking money from citizens and residents of a state like New York and then taking that money and then giving it to federal infrastructure in Tennessee. Or not federal infrastructure in Tennessee. Like, how does that make sense? How does it make sense to put out a tax on everybody and then start redistributing money in a wasteful way? Because number one, you have to pay for the labor costs of building infrastructure. So some of that money is being wasted by even the process of you needing to pay federal employees to shift that money. The people who live in Florida should pay for Florida's infrastructure. The people who live in Ohio should pay for Ohio's infrastructure. The people who live in California should pay for California's infrastructure. I don't see how that's controversial. And I don't see why the federal government needs to be involved in moving everything around and making everything less efficient. The federal government's job should be to take care of the federal government's infrastructure. I mean, this is like federalism. This is like what the Constitution is supposed to be about the division between federal and state governments. Not only that, when the federal government makes these rules, it makes regulations that now the states have to comply with, and it just makes everybody a little bit less autonomous. It makes Ohioans, people who live in Ohio, they have less autonomy over their state governance because now the federal government has put rules and regulations on spending. And Ohio accepts that spending, and then Ohio becomes more like what the federal government wants it to be like. So it centralizes power. It takes power out of the hands of local governments and state governments and into the hand of federal governments. And we all are different. So that's one bad thing about it. And then another bad thing about it is it's just wasteful. It's just wasteful spending. So it's bad politically, it's bad economically. And then I think the most egregious thing here is the private spending, the giving subsidies to you already know, the Elon Musks of the world, the Amazons of the world, these people who already are doing really, really good. You're giving them more money. You're giving them more subsidies instead of letting the market compete. And if another company is better, letting them outcompete rather than the government covering these companies and giving them money. And I think one of the things that is like so hypocritical to me is, you have a lot of Republicans who joined in on this bill. And I understand people want to get things done, but you have a lot of Republicans joined in on this bill, and the Republican Party is supposed to be the party of fiscal conservatism and federalism and separation between the federal government, states, and the states. And they're joining in on this, and they're trying to, rationalize why this is okay. I mean, it's not okay. It's a bad bill. It's a bad bill. This bill should have been focused on federal infrastructure. That's it. Now, like I said, I admit that it's a lot better than the first bill, but I'm going to get to why that's kind of an illusion anyways, because the Democrats have already said that they're planning on, passing a partisan human infrastructure bill after this anyways. So both things have a high chance of being done. So this is my take on it. Please comment, like, subscribe. And I'm gonna talk about in the next video a little bit about the partisan infrastructure bill and a couple of other things.